Forget every sanitized Western you've ever watched. The real frontier wasn't armed with just Colts and Winchesters. Hidden in boots, disguised as walking canes, and strapped to belt buckles were weapons so dangerous, so deadly, that towns across the West banned them outright. But Prohibition never stopped an outlaw. While sheriffs posted ordinances and marshals confiscated firearms, desperados, gamblers, and hired guns kept carrying the most brutal, underhanded, and downright terrifying weapons ever conceived. Today, we're counting down 20 weapons that frontier law tried to erase, but outlaws refused to surrender. Some were banned for being too effective, others for being too cruel, and one was so devastating it could clear an entire street with a single trigger pull. Number 20. The sawed-off shotgun, the alley sweeper. Picture a weapon so terrifying that simply shortening it turned a hunting tool into an instrument banned across the frontier. The sawed-off shotgun wasn't just modified, it was weaponized specifically for urban carnage. While a standard shotgun measured 30 inches or more, outlaws took hacksaws to barrels and stocks, creating compact devastation machines measuring barely 18 inches total. Wells Fargo guards called them messenger guns. Stagecoach robbers called them insurance policies. Town marshals called them illegal and confiscated them on sight. In the cramped confines of a saloon, bank, or narrow street, a sawed-off shotgun transformed into a room-clearing nightmare. Its shortened barrel created a wider shot spread, meaning accuracy became irrelevant. Point in the general direction and pull the trigger. Everything in a 10-foot cone ceased to exist. Jesse James's gang favored them during bank robberies. Bob Dalton carried one into Coffeyville, Kansas in 1892. The modification came with brutal trade-offs. The cut barrel produced a muzzle blast so violent it could deafen the shooter. Recoil became punishing, and the weapon's effective range dropped to barely 20 yards. Still, for an outlaw planning to get close and get gone, nothing said business quite like racking a sawed-off in a crowded room. Number 19. The brass knuckle pistol, the gambler's equalizer. Imagine sitting across a poker table from a man whose hand suddenly transforms into both a club and a gun. The brass knuckle pistol, also called the Apache knuckle duster, combined a small caliber revolver with brass knuckles and sometimes a folding blade. Patented in Europe during the 1860s, these hybrid weapons flooded American gambling halls by the 1870s. The genius was cruel simplicity. Wear it like brass knuckles for intimidation. Swing it like a club if the fight turns physical. Fire it point blank if someone reaches for their gun first. Gamblers and confidence men loved these weapons because they offered options no standard pistol provided. A punch to the face could end a dispute without drawing the law. But flip a small lever, and suddenly that brass fist held a 7-shot, 22 caliber cylinder. Towns, from Dodge City to Tombstone, specifically banned knuckle guns in their firearms ordinances. The combination of concealed firearm and striking weapon violated multiple laws simultaneously. French-made Apaches were most common, but American gunsmiths built crude copies in basement workshops from Chicago to San Francisco. The weapons had serious flaws. Pinfire ammunition was unreliable. The short barrel meant accuracy was a joke beyond arm's length. Yet for card sharps and grifters who lived by deception, the brass knuckle pistol was the perfect backup plan hidden in plain sight. Number 18. The belt buckle pistol, hidden death. What looks like an ordinary belt buckle but fires a fatal round directly into someone pressing against you. The belt buckle pistol was the concealed carry weapon taken to its logical and deadly extreme. These devices weren't holsters. They were actual firearms built into functional belt buckles worn openly on the waist. Trigger mechanisms varied. Some required pressing a hidden lever. Others featured a pull cord running through the belt itself. The most devious designs fired when pressed hard against a target, turning a grappling fight into an execution. German and Belgian gunsmiths pioneered the design in the 1850s, but American outfitters sold them through mail-order catalogs by the 1870s. Montgomery Ward's 1882 catalog listed them as gentlemen's protection devices, though everyone knew their real purpose: assassination and close-quarters murder. These weren't weapons for honest gunfights. They were tools for shooting someone during a handshake or while being searched by lawmen. Frontier jurisdictions tried desperately to ban them, but enforcement was nearly impossible. How do you arrest someone for wearing a belt? The weapons fired small caliber rounds, usually 22 or 25, barely sufficient to penetrate clothing at contact range. The The devices suffered from catastrophic reliability issues. Misfires could shoot the wearer in the groin. Yet, for assassins and paranoid gamblers, the belt-buckle pistol represented the ultimate insurance policy, a weapon no one could see until it was already too late. Number 17. The cane gun, the gentleman's secret. Not every deadly weapon looked dangerous. The cane gun appeared to be nothing more than a walking stick, a mark of sophistication carried by wealthy travelers across the frontier. Twist the handle, press a hidden trigger, and suddenly that innocent cane fired a full-power rifle cartridge. European nobility had carried cane guns since the 1700s, but they became wildly popular in America during the 1860s and 70s, especially among businessmen traveling through rough territories. The brilliance was psychological. A man carrying a cane looked vulnerable, perhaps disabled, the perfect target for robbery, until that cane erupted with a .44 caliber surprise. Remington manufactured elegant models with Damascus steel barrels hidden inside polished hardwood. Cheaper versions from Belgian makers flooded the market through catalog sales. Frontier towns hated them. Concealed weapons violated carry ordinances in most settlements, but proving a cane contained a firearm required inspection, and demanding a gentleman's walking stick often led to complaints of harassment. The weapon's greatest advantage was plausible deniability. Caught carrying it, claim ignorance. It was grandfather's antique, a gift from Europe, just a walking stick, Marshall. The cane gun's weakness was its single-shot limitation. Fire once and you're holding an empty stick against someone with a six-shooter. Still, for one surprise shot that could save your life or eliminate a target, the cane gun remained a frontier favorite until well into the 1900s. Number 16. The Apache revolver, the silent killer. While most revolvers made noise and drew attention, one weapon was designed specifically for silent, brutal, close-quarters murder. The Apache revolver combined a knuckle duster, a small revolver cylinder, and a folding knife blade into a weapon banned across Europe and America for sheer viciousness. Parisian criminal gangs called the Apaches gave this weapon its name in the 1870s. The design was ingenious for street violence. The entire weapon folded into a package small enough to conceal in a coat pocket. Unfold it, and you held 3 weapons simultaneously. The pinfire revolver cylinder fired 7.22 caliber rounds. The spring-loaded blade extended to 4 inches, and the frame itself served as brass knuckles. This wasn't a weapon for honest fights. It was built for ambush, assassination, and savage close-range attacks. American outlaws discovered Apaches through French imports and locally made copies. Towns banned them immediately, but the weapons kept appearing in evidence lockers after killings in Denver Street, Louis, and New Orleans. The Apache's terror came from versatility. Stab someone approaching from behind, shoot someone reaching for their own gun, pistol whip someone already down, all without changing weapons. The weapon's reputation exceeded its effectiveness. Pinfire ammunition was notoriously unreliable. The blade mechanism jammed with dirt or blood, and the brass knuckle frame often broke when used for striking. Yet the Apache revolver's psychological impact was undeniable. A weapon designed purely for killing at arm's length with no sporting purpose whatsoever. Number 15. The knife-pistol combo, double trouble. What happens when gunsmiths decide every blade should also be a firearm? You get the knife pistol, a weapon category so broad it included everything from Bowie knives with pistol grips to folding blades with trigger mechanisms built into the handle. These weren't gentlemen's tools. They were outlaw specials designed for the moment when a knife fight suddenly requires bullets. American gunsmiths began experimenting with combination weapons during the 1840s. A 10-inch Bowie blade with a .41 caliber Derringer built into the crossguard. Spring-loaded daggers that fired on thrust, driving both blade and bullet into the target. Towns banned these combination weapons almost immediately, but enforcement was difficult. A knife that happened to also be a gun looked like just a knife until someone pulled the trigger. The weapons were mechanically unreliable nightmares. Yet they remained popular through the 1880s, particularly among river pirates and backwoods criminals who valued intimidation over engineering quality. Number 14. The Harmonica gun, volley fire terror. Picture a weapon that unleashes an entire magazine of rifle rounds in a single devastating volley. The Harmonica gun, named for its sliding ammunition magazine that resembled a musical instrument, represented one of the frontier's most feared and quickly banned firearms. A horizontal magazine containing 6 to 10 rifle cartridges slid through the breech. Most designs fired all rounds simultaneously when triggered, creating a wall of lead that could drop multiple men or a horse in one terrible instant. Confederate troops experimented with them during the Civil War. Union officers called them unfair advantages, but the weapon was extraordinarily dangerous to the shooter. 10 rifle cartridges firing at once produced recoil that could break shoulders. The muzzle blast was blinding and deafening. Worse, the mechanism jammed constantly. Towns banned volley guns explicitly. The weapons weren't for self-defense, they were for ambush and mass killing. Number 13. The chain pistol, the repeater nobody wanted. Innovation sometimes creates monsters. The chain pistol was one of those cursed designs that solved a problem nobody had while creating dangers nobody wanted. Instead of a rotating cylinder, these weapons fed cartridges from a chain of ammunition links wrapped around the frame or running through the grip. Picture a revolver bred with a machine gun belt, and you're close. Several inventors patented chain pistol designs during the 1860s and 70s. The theory was sound. A chain could hold more rounds than a cylinder. The reality was nightmarish. The chains jammed constantly. Each link had to feed precisely, or the weapon seized. Black powder residue turned the mechanism into a gummed-up mess after a few shots. Worse, the weapons were dangerous to everyone nearby. Chain links under tension would sometimes snap free during firing, whipping around like shrapnel. Several documented cases from the 1870s describe shooters losing fingers or suffering facial injuries from their own chain pistols malfunctioning. Frontier jurisdictions banned them not because outlaws loved them, but because they were too dangerous to permit. Even criminals didn't want weapons that might explode in their hands. Yet, some desperate men carried them anyway. The intimidation factor was real. Draw a chain pistol, and your opponent sees what looks like a repeating weapon with limitless capacity. That moment of hesitation could be enough. Collectors today consider chain pistols among the rarest and most bizarre firearms of the frontier era. Most surviving examples show minimal use, suggesting even their original owners quickly realized the design was fundamentally flawed. Number 12. The boot gun, the last resort. When you've been searched, disarmed, and think you're defenseless, reach for your boot. The boot gun, also called a muff pistol when worn in ankle holsters, represented the frontier's ultimate backup weapon. These were tiny, single or double-shot derringers, small enough to tuck inside a boot top or strap to an ankle, invisible to casual inspection. Remington and Sharps manufactured popular boot gun models during the 1870s. The firearms measured barely 3 inches long, fired 32 or 41 caliber rounds, and featured folding triggers to prevent snagging. They weren't meant for gunfights. They were meant for executions. Outlaws loved boot guns because lawmen often stopped searching after finding one weapon. Confiscate the holstered Colt and miss the derringer in the left boot, and suddenly the prisoner isn't quite as helpless as he seemed. Escape attempts often featured boot guns. So did saloon murders. Walk up to someone unarmed, share a drink, then stand and put 2 rounds through their chest from the gun you just pulled from your boot. Towns tried banning them, but enforcement was nearly impossible. The weapons were close-range desperation tools. Effective range was measured in feet. Accuracy was non-existent beyond arm's length. But for a final surprise shot, when all other options had failed, the boot gun was perfect. Billy the Kid allegedly carried a boot gun during his many arrests. Doc Holliday kept one as backup. The boot gun represented the frontier philosophy that being ready meant being armed, even when you appeared to have surrendered every weapon. Number 11. The Duck's Foot Pistol, the crowd controller. Imagine a pistol with 4 barrels splayed out like fingers, designed specifically to fire into a crowd and hit multiple targets simultaneously. The Duck's Foot Pistol, named for its distinctive shape resembling a waterfowl's spread foot, was the crowd control weapon of the frontier era. British naval officers used Duck's Foot pistols to suppress mutinies during the 1800s. Fire into a mob of angry sailors and 4 men drop instead of 1. American versions appeared during the 1840s and remained available through specialty gunsmiths into the 1880s. The design was simple brutality. 4 barrels, each angled slightly outward from center, all connected to a single trigger. Pull once and 4 shots fire simultaneously, spreading their deadly pattern across a 90-degree arc. Prison guards valued them. Stagecoach escorts carried them. And outlaws used them to rob crowded saloons or clear out bank tellers. The psychological impact was immense. Face a duck's foot pistol and you can't dodge. The spread pattern means someone's getting hit. Towns banned them for being indiscriminate killing tools. You couldn't fire a duck's foot without risking bystanders. The weapons were single shot only. Once fired, you held an empty paperweight. Reloading required seating 4 percussion caps and 4 charges, a time-consuming process impossible during any confrontation. Still, for one terrible moment of overwhelming firepower, the duck's foot pistol was unmatched. A weapon built purely for the moment when killing one person wasn't enough. Number 10. The pepperbox revolver, the original spray and pray. Long before modern repeating pistols, there was the pepperbox, a weapon with 4, 5, or 6 rotating barrels that looked like a cluster of pipes and fired with all the accuracy of throwing buckshot at a barn door. These weren't precision instruments. They were panic buttons built for close-quarters chaos. The pepperbox predated the Colt revolver by decades, rotating its entire barrel cluster instead of a cylinder. The rotating barrels made them front-heavy and awkward. Each barrel pointed slightly different directions, meaning accuracy was hopeless. But outlaws kept carrying them because they looked terrifying. At bad breath distance inside a saloon, accuracy didn't matter. Pull the trigger repeatedly and fill the air with lead. Something would connect. Today, they're curiosities. Then, they were weapons of men who valued volume of fire over accuracy. Number 9. The turret rifle, rotating death. What happens when engineers mount a revolving cylinder horizontally instead of vertically? You get the turret rifle, one of the most dangerous weapons ever conceived, both to targets and to the shooter. Colt made the most famous version during the 1850s. The concept seemed logical, a repeating rifle with multiple chambers ready to fire in sequence. The reality was terrifying. When one chamber fired, the flash from the percussion cap often ignited adjacent chambers. Suddenly, all 8 rounds would fire at once, sending bullets in multiple directions, including directly at the shooter's face. Multiple documented cases describe shooters killed or maimed by their own turret rifles. Towns banned them outright after several accidental deaths. Even outlaws recognized turret rifles as suicide machines. In practice, you were as likely to kill yourself as your target. Number 8. The Volcanic pistol, the failed future. Sometimes the most banned weapons weren't banned for being too effective. They were banned for being too terrible. The Volcanic pistol represented the future of repeating firearms, a lever-action pistol that could fire multiple shots before reloading. The problem was, it barely worked. Smith & Wesson developed the Volcanic design in the 1850s. Before they became famous for revolvers, the concept was brilliant. A lever-action mechanism similar to a rifle, but in pistol form. Each pull of the lever loaded the next cartridge. Just smooth, continuous fire. Except the Volcanic fired a proprietary rocket ball cartridge that produced less power than throwing the pistol at someone. The ammunition was a hollow bullet packed with powder and primed in the base. No brass case, barely enough force to be lethal even at point-blank range. Volcanic pistols were commercial failures. The company went bankrupt. The design's assets were eventually bought by Oliver Winchester, who improved the lever-action concept into the famous Winchester rifle. But during the brief period Volcanic pistols were available, from 1854 to 1857, they represented a technological dead end. Towns didn't ban Volcanic pistols because they were dangerous. They banned them because they were associated with conmen and grifters. The weapons looked impressive and futuristic, perfect for intimidating marks who didn't know they were essentially useless. Wave a Volcanic pistol around and most people would back down, assuming they faced a revolutionary new weapon. Actually fire it, and the target might not even realize they'd been shot. Outlaws who carried Volcanic pistols were either desperately poor or specifically using them as intimidation props. The weapons became symbols of fraud and deception, and many frontier ordinances specifically mentioned lever-action pistols in their banned weapons lists, even though the Volcanic had already disappeared from the market. Number 7. The sword pistol, the cavalry's nightmare. Combining edged weapons with firearms was a frontier obsession. The sword pistol took this concept to its most dramatic extreme, creating a weapon that was neither a good sword nor a good pistol, but absolutely terrifying to face. Picture a cavalry saber with a pistol barrel running through the blade itself, or mounted alongside it. European officers carried sword pistols during the Napoleonic Wars, and American versions appeared during the Civil War. Confederate cavalry officers favored sword pistols made by local Southern gunsmiths. After the war, these weapons filtered into civilian hands. Frontier towns immediately recognized the threat and banned combination weapons. The weapons had severe practical limitations, but outlaws carried them for psychological reasons. Draw a weapon that's both blade and gun, and opponents had to respect both threats simultaneously. Sword pistols remained in use through the 1880s among former Confederate guerrillas who refused to surrender them. Number 6. The ring pistol, the assassin's choice. The ultimate concealed weapon wasn't hidden in a pocket or boot. It was worn openly on your finger, disguised as jewelry. The ring pistol was a tiny firearm built into an oversized ring worn on the hand. French and Belgian gunsmiths pioneered the design during the 1860s. American versions appeared in the 1870s, though they were never mass-produced. The ring featured a rotating barrel mechanism, or single barrel, that fired when a hidden trigger was squeezed. Most used pinfire or rimfire cartridges in minuscule calibers, 22 or smaller. These weren't weapons for honest gunfights. They were assassination tools. Wear the ring openly, shake someone's hand, fire point-blank into their chest while gripping their hand. The ring gun represented the ultimate in treacherous weapons. There was no defensive purpose. You wore it specifically for the moment when you could get close enough to commit murder while appearing unarmed. Frontier law enforcement despised ring pistols. Several town ordinances from the 1870s specifically banned firearms disguised as jewelry. Tombstone's famous ordinance included language about concealed weapons, regardless of form. The weapons were mechanically awful. Barrels were barely an inch long, providing zero accuracy. The tiny cartridges lacked stopping power, yet assassins and paranoid gamblers still sought them out. A weapon you literally never removed, ensuring you were armed even in the most intimate moments. Number 5. The Howdah pistol, the elephant gun for men. Sometimes a weapon wasn't banned for being sneaky. Sometimes it was banned for being ridiculously, unnecessarily overpowered. The Howdah pistol was designed to stop charging elephants in India, but American frontiersmen decided it would work just fine on people. These massive handguns fired rifle cartridges from short, thick barrels. British officers hunting tigers from elephant-mounted Howdahs needed a close-range weapon that could drop a wounded cat before it reached them. Gunmakers produced enormous 4-bore and 8-bore pistols that fired bullets weighing multiple ounces. American versions appeared during the 1860s, chambered for heavy cartridges like .58 caliber or larger. Frontiersmen facing grizzly bears adopted them. So did outlaws who wanted absolute stopping power. A Howdah pistol could punch through cover, drop a horse, or kill multiple men with a single shot if they were lined up properly. The weapons were completely impractical. They weighed 5 to 7 pounds. Recoil was savage enough to break wrists or dislocate shoulders. Accuracy beyond 10 yards was hopeless. Towns banned Howdah pistols as excessive weapons unsuitable for civilian use. Yet outlaws prized them for specific jobs. Need to stop a stagecoach by killing the lead horse? Howdah pistol. Need to blast through a locked door? Howdah pistol. The men who carried them were making a statement. Subtlety didn't matter when you could overpower any opposition with a hand cannon that belonged on a ship's deck. Number 4. The Lamont carbine, the shotgun rifle hybrid. What happens when the Lamont revolver's deadly shotgun pistol combination gets scaled up to rifle size? The Lamont carbine was a repeating rifle with a secondary smooth-bore barrel capable of firing buckshot or a single large slug, creating a weapon so versatile and deadly that possession alone could earn jail time. Confederate forces experimented with Lamont carbines during the Civil War. Colonel Jean Lamont produced limited numbers for cavalry use. The design featured a 9-shot 42 caliber revolving cylinder around a central 20-gauge shotgun barrel, all mounted on a carbine-length stock. Switch between rifle and shotgun with a hammer adjustment. Union officers called them unfair advantages and vowed to confiscate any captured Lamont carbines. After the war, surviving Lamont carbines became highly sought after by outlaws and frontier criminals. The weapon offered unprecedented versatility. Hunt game with the rifle function, clear rooms with the shotgun blast, fight at long range or point blank with the same firearm. Frontier towns banned them explicitly. Ordinances from the 1870s often included specific language prohibiting combination, long arms, or weapons with multiple firing modes. Carrying a Lamont carbine into Dodge City or Tombstone meant immediate arrest. The weapons were rare even during their brief production period. Ammunition was a constant challenge. The revolving cylinder used cartridges that weren't standardized, while the shotgun barrel could accept various loads but performed best with specific charges. Mechanical reliability was questionable. The complex mechanism required regular maintenance. Still, for the outlaw who managed to acquire and maintain a Lamont carbine, they possessed one of the most formidable weapons on the frontier. Number 3. The knock gun, 7 barrels of hell. If 4 barrels wasn't enough and 6 seemed insufficient, British gunsmiths had an answer. The knock gun featured 7 barrels bundled together, firing simultaneously in a volcanic eruption of lead that could clear a ship's deck or stop a charging mob. This wasn't a frontier weapon originally, but Royal Navy surplus knock guns found their way to America after the Napoleonic Wars. The design was straightforward insanity. 7 .46 caliber smoothbore barrels arranged with one central barrel surrounded by 6 others. One flintlock mechanism fired all 7 simultaneously when triggered. The weapon was designed for naval boarding actions, where one devastating blast into a group of enemy sailors could turn a battle. American versions and copies appeared during the 1830s and 40s. By the frontier period, knock guns were antiques, but still functional and absolutely terrifying. A single shot from a knock gun produced an explosion that sounded like a small cannon. The 7 balls would spread slightly, creating a pattern similar to a massive shotgun blast. Effective range was measured in yards, but at that range, anything in front of the gun ceased to exist. The recoil was legendary. Firing a knock gun from the shoulder could dislocate joints or cause serious injury to the shooter. Towns banned knock guns and similar volley weapons as military armaments unsuitable for civilian use. The weapons served no sporting purpose, and their only function was mass casualties. Yet, some outlaws kept them specifically for shock value. Rob a bank with a knock gun braced on the counter, and no one questions whether you're serious. Most surviving knock guns are in museums today, reminders of an era when firearms design valued devastating power over practical usability. Number 2. The Girandoni air rifle, the silent death machine. Forget black powder and muzzle blast. The deadliest rifle on the frontier made almost no noise and left no smoke. The Girandoni air rifle predated modern firearms technology by using compressed air to fire lead balls at lethal velocities, and frontier jurisdictions banned it specifically because silent killing violated every rule of fair combat. The Girandoni was developed in Italy during the 1770s for Austrian military use. By the early 1800s, examples had reached America. Lewis and Clark carried a Girandoni on their expedition, using it to intimidate native tribes with its rapid, smokeless fire. The weapon's air reservoir, a metal flask attached to the stock, held enough pressure for approximately 30 shots before requiring pumping. Each shot produced only a sharp crack of air and the thud of impact. No muzzle flash, no smoke cloud revealing position, just silent, repeated death. For frontier outlaws, the Girandoni represented the ultimate assassination weapon. Ambush, a target from concealment, fire multiple shots, and disappear before anyone realizes what happened. No gun smoke to reveal your position, no sound to alert nearby witnesses. Towns banned air rifles specifically because they enabled murder without witnesses. Tombstone's 1881 ordinance included language prohibiting noiseless projectile weapons. Dodge City and Deadwood had similar rules. The weapons were rare by the frontier period. Original Girandonis were Austrian military surplus, expensive and difficult to maintain. The air reservoirs required specialized pumps and could rupture if overfilled. Still, their reputation exceeded their availability. Stories spread of silent killers using air rifles to commit murders that went unsolved because no one heard gunshots. The Girandoni represented technology ahead of its time, and frontier law decided such technology was too dangerous for civilian hands. Silent weapons removed the warning that gave honest men a chance to defend themselves, making them the tools of assassins rather than fighters. Number 1. The punt gun, the ultimate banned weapon. The most devastating weapon of the Wild West wasn't a pistol or rifle. It was a cannon disguised as a shotgun. The punt gun, measuring up to 10 feet long and weighing over 70 pounds, fired loads that could kill 50 to 100 birds with a single shot. When outlaws realized it could also kill 50 people, frontier law enforcement lost their minds trying to ban them. Designed for commercial waterfowl hunting, these massive smoothbores were mounted on small boats to slaughter duck flocks for market sale. But during the frontier period, they were legal, available, and catastrophically deadly in the wrong hands. The weapons fired 8 ounces to a full pound of shot, equivalent to firing 16 to 32 shotgun shells simultaneously. The blast radius extended 50 yards or more, producing casualties that looked like artillery fire. Outlaws mounted punt guns on wagon beds, transforming them into mobile siege weapons. Aim one at a bank or pursuing posse, and negotiations began immediately. Towns responded with blanket bans. Dodge City's 1878 ordinance prohibited any firearm requiring multiple persons to operate. Firing without proper bracing could break bones from recoil. Yet, for outlaws facing overwhelming opposition, the punt gun represented absolute firepower. One shot that transformed any gunfight into a massacre. From belt buckles that fired bullets to silent air rifles and artillery disguised as shotguns, these 20 weapons represented the absolute edge of frontier violence. Hollywood never showed these guns because they didn't fit the narrative. No honorable quick-draw duels with these tools. Just concealed murder, overwhelming firepower, and mechanical innovations designed purely for killing. Every single weapon we've covered earned its ban through blood. Towns and territories didn't prohibit these firearms because they looked dangerous. They banned them because they enabled murder that gave victims no chance, fights that became massacres, and violence that violated every code the frontier supposedly lived by. Yet, outlaws carried them anyway. Because when survival meant victory and defeat meant death, rules became suggestions, and honor became a luxury no one could afford. These weren't the weapons of legends. They were the weapons of desperate men who understood that the real West was never about fair fights. It was about staying alive by any means necessary, legal or not. So which of these banned weapons shocked you most? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more journeys into the weapons and tactics that shaped America's most violent era, subscribe. Because the real stories are always darker, stranger, and more brutal than anything Hollywood ever imagined.